of you are a bit sleepy because it's still in the morning. So, our topic is about identifying best procurement processes and practices for agricultural commodities. And to get warm, we have prepared a little exercise, a little game for you. So we have two groups. Perhaps we can separate it in the middle. I don't know if, I think that's okay. In the middle. And we have some questions, and you have to raise your hand if you want to answer the question, and we have a little prize for the winner. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah, good. So the first question, as everybody has bought in his life a soap, do you know where the palm oil in this soap comes from? Lencha was the first.
Indonesia, Borneo.
Yeah, for example, very good. And this is 1 point for your group. But you always have to think about that many companies don't know where it comes from. Of course, you said now a lot of countries, but it's the same for many companies. They don't really know where it comes from or under which condition it is produced. Okay, next question. What do you think when you hear agricultural commodities? Sanovi, first.
Wood, pesticides, food, anything from the whole range.
Okay, yeah. Somebody else? Elaine?
Probably the wrong answer, but I think it cows.
What do you think of
Cows.
Okay, yeah. Okay, agricultural commodities. What we're going to talk about is more about soya, cotton, rice, corn. But of course, it was also correct. But it's just that we are on the same page, that you know we are talking about these really raw materials, crops especially. Okay, next question. Do you know who buys agricultural commodities and for what reason? It was Rumi.
All kind of food companies,
Yeah. Cosmetic, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's usually, you always think of food, but it's also cosmetic, of course. Yeah. Sebastian?
Speculation.
Yeah, that's true. But what we're going to look at is more what Rumi said. So. Thank you for your comment. Okay, next question. Can someone explain what procurement means? Oscar?
Buying process.
Yeah. Exactly, so you buy something, yeah. It's just because we've realized that many people don't know the word procurement, so it's when companies buy something. Okay. And the last question is about INGOs. INGOs means the International Non-Governmental Organizations. So when it comes to agricultural commodities, can you think of one INGO that procures agricultural commodities?
I think it's called FOA, but I don't add like that.
FAO?
FAO.
Very good. So I have the feeling that this group was much better. So, one agricultural commodity for this group. So, very good. Okay, so our agenda for today is, first of all, we think of this spiral we've already heard about. We start with the sustainability challenge, then we go deeper with the agricultural challenge, and then we look at the procurement process in the value chain of agricultural commodities, and in the middle of the spiral we look at the research questions, the methods, and the support we want from you. Yeah, for the sustainability challenge, I don't want to spend too much time on it because you already know it, that we have this vision of a sustainable society. We want to strive towards it, and we want to avoid to hit the walls of the funnel. I think that's enough for the sustainability challenge, as we already know about it.
So just to scope down slightly further and look at the sustainability challenge more as it relates to our topic, we feel really confident that our topic is a topic of importance because of just the sheer quantity of sustainability issues relating to the global agricultural system. It's almost a challenge for us to sort of decide, what we will even mention in our introduction, because, I could stand here for hours and just spew statistics about, problems related to the global agricultural system with regard to sustainability, but I'll just run through some here. 85% of the world's fresh water is diverted into agriculture. 40% of the Earth's soil right now is degraded to the point of decreased productivity. 12.5% of worldwide greenhouse gas emissions are a result of agriculture, and that does not factor in land use change, fertilizer production, transportation for food. 40% of that comes from methane, 62% from nitrous oxide. And then there are obvious SP4 related issues with regard to labor, poor working conditions, access to education and healthcare. And then we have the double explosion of population and affluence, growing consumer bases. We are going to have to feed roughly 9 billion people by 2042. And what I'm about to say sounds so crazy that it almost seems stupid, but in the next 40 years, we have to produce this single planet that we live on. We have to produce as much food as we produced in the past 8,000. So, good luck.
Yeah, and now that we've heard about the agricultural challenge we have to face, where should we look, where should we focus to make a change? And that is what we got excited about. It was a TED Talk from Jason Clay from WWF. And he mainly said that when you look at the value chain of agricultural commodities, you have many, many farmers which are in different countries, different languages, different practices. And you have a lot of consumers on the other end of the value chain. They also live in different countries, have different traditions, cultures. So it's very difficult if you want to force a change in these unorganized systems. And it's easier if you when you just look at the procurement process within companies or organizations. Because these procurement processes are very organized, and they are just a few people who make the decisions about what is procured and under which condition it is procured. So, for example, the grain trade is controlled by 3 companies worldwide, and they control 90% of the whole grain trade. And this is Cargill, Bunch, and ADM. So 90% only is controlled by 3 companies. And if you look at all the big brands, there are so many brands, but mainly they are controlled by 10 multinationals like Coca-Cola, Kraft, Unilever, Nestle. So if you want to focus on these companies, it's like a leverage point, because you can focus on a very small or few persons, few organizations, but you can make a big change if they change, because they have such a big impact. Yeah, that is the thing we got excited about when we want to look at procurement. Yeah.
So, as Christiana mentioned, there's a huge potential for change if you can get these select companies to change. There's actually about 58 companies that control 25% of the agricultural commodities, and that's total. But these 58 can actually affect about 45 to 50% of the producers, because people are competing to sell their products to them. So, as I think we've established, it's a huge leverage point with a lot of influence. However, there's not really like a standardized system. We need an analytical framework that is based in the principles of sustainability that can help these organizations on their path to move towards, to help with a more sustainable global agricultural system. So, if you can get consumers to if the procurers insist on sustainable products, then the producers will meet their demand, and then it makes it just a pre-competitive issue for the consumers. So some of the INGOs, the international aid companies, they are taking, oh, excuse me. So even though the INGOs don't actually compete in the same field of business, they're not procuring as many commodities as the multinationals, the FAO alone spent like $36 million in procuring fruit and vegetables. So they're still big, produce and grain. So they're still big players. But they're in the business of providing food security for millions of people all over the world. So it's really important that they are able to stay in business and that they don't hit the funnel walls. And with increasing weather disruptions and natural disasters, their job is going to become even more difficult in the years ahead. And their role in society will become increasingly important. So presently, lots of INGOs use vastly different frameworks. And they have lots of different policies and guidelines for procurement, but none of them exactly, most of them focus on price and and social issues, but a lot of them completely neglect the environment. So there's definitely a need there. And one of our contacts that we've been speaking with, who is in the field, says that the general feeling within a lot of the UN organizations is that they're already doing so much that they really just don't need to care about sustainability. So there's definitely a need. Which leads us to our research question. How can existing procurement tools and practices be evaluated and improved upon to develop a sustainable model or recommendations for procurement of agricultural commodities? Ideally, we would like to look at multinationals and INGOs. However, we are struggling a bit to get some actual contacts in multinationals. So if we can't do that, we will change our question to just focus on INGOs because we do already have contacts with them. The aim of our project is really to produce something that is results-based. We are very committed to creating a tool or a framework that can actually be used by businesses or INGOs. And we think that having access to someone inside the industry is drastically going to improve the usefulness and the applicability of whatever we create. So we're really hoping that we can get some contacts. I'll mention that like 10 more times before I finish talking. And the scope is, yes, right now it's INGOs and multinationals, but we may narrow it depending on the context and depending on what kind of similarities we see or don't see. We are having a bit of trouble. The more we learn, the more we're worried that the two systems might be just drastically different and not really able to compare them. So, and audience, really anyone that is making a decision about buying food, or anyone that is involved in the supply chain, or anyone that might be involved in writing agricultural trade policies. So we are aware that change will only happen if multi-stakeholders are involved, and we want our results to be accessible to all actors in the decision-making process.
So these are just a few examples of places where we feel we might run into problems or limitations. One, as Kyle already mentioned, is access to large organizations, and within that is kind of projection versus reality. Companies are more likely to market to you than tell you the truth. We were talking with Cecilia recently, who obviously studies procurement, and she said she went to a conference recently where they basically just marketed what they're doing and tried to sell how sustainable they were, and she couldn't really get a great sense of how well they were actually doing it. There's also just often a significant gap between purchasers and farmers, depending on whether in the private sector or the public sector. There's often governments in between that are purchasing food in mass, and commodities traders in between. International trade law in general just food and agriculture policy in general is going to make it very difficult for us to sort of get to the core. I mean, if you look at our idea, you could kind of say, oh, you know, just start implementing the FSSD in procurement and everything will be better. Well, it's significantly more complicated than that, and there's this sort of mean, corrupt machine of governments, agribusinesses, and aid organizations that have kind of entrenched themselves in a bit of a vicious cycle that may be difficult to get our minds around and actually break. So as for our methods, the idea is to kind of take, you all remember our tools and concepts assignment. The idea is to take a tools and concepts type approach to existing processes. So basically would like to sort of derive the best practices using the FSSD as an analytical tool from these organizations to sort of see what is working the best from an FSSD standpoint, where the gaps are from an FSSD standpoint, so that we can then create a model or a set of recommendations. For the time being, we've kind of said maybe 3 NGOs, a couple corporations to serve as case studies. We have easy access or more easy access to INGOs and relief organizations. So we may end up looking at 6 INGOs relief organizations alone, and again that will sort of depend on where our topic ends up going. But in carrying out these sort of mini tools and concepts assignments, we're planning to interview sustainability officers, supply chain professionals, and really the people within the organizations that are responsible for the purchase of agricultural commodities. And surveys, we have this kind of a backup we're developing or trying to decide how those may play a role. So as for corporations, we're interested in corporations that are already moving towards sustainability in their supply chain, but we're also interested in just companies that we might actually have access to on this list. Unilever, Max Sandberger, for instance, Walmart, they've already, we think that we could learn a great deal from them in terms of what they've learned on their journey towards developing a more sustainable supply chain. And then the others on the list are just organizations that or companies that we think we may actually be able to access. And then on this list you'll see international NGOs and aid organizations that basically buy a lot of agricultural commodities, that will buy a lot of food and bring it into underdeveloped countries in situations of famine or disaster relief. And they're also organizations that we think we may be able to gain access to.
So this is what we're hoping from you. We're wondering if any of you have any connections to any of the organizations that we showed. We are working a little bit together with S2 in Geneva, who is doing a study that is looking at the sustainability of procurement from a lot of UN nations, but they're looking more primarily at manufactured goods, and they are in that field, in that circle, so they said they have contacts, but we haven't actually received any of them yet. So if anyone else also has some more access we have, the better. But primarily we would love some contacts, some real ins at any of the multinational companies that we listed or otherwise. We'd be curious to know what your thoughts on sustainable procurement look like, besides, something that's more like specific to agriculture. And if you have any ideas about how our research methods could be more robust, we would like feedback on that. And finally, are we comparing apples and maize and comparing INGOs NGOs and multinationals. Like, do you think that is just insane? I'm getting a lot of nods. Yeah, but we'd love your thoughts and your feedback on everything. So thank you very much.
All right, so just like yesterday, we'll start with 10 minutes from the shadow group and then hand it over to Khaled and then to the advisors.
Should I start? Okay. Well, good work. Very clear presentation. I just have like